I do, and just started, one thing after the other and just built. I didn't know how I was a process person.
Yeah.
And that's like talking about gifts and talents.
Yeah.
Every time I went somewhere, I had to fix something, or I had to stand up for rights and stuff like that. So it was like from the time I was in elementary school all the way up, I always had to fix something, or if something was wrong, I'm going to make sure, that it got fixed. One time my mom had had to come up to school at Air Force Academy, and they're like, the teacher's like, can you tell your daughter to give us back the class? And I was like, well, and my mom's like, well, Cynthia, you can't do this. I'm like 5 years old. I said, she's not teaching the ABCs right. So, for parents that, or parents or people raising kids like that, you might think that child is rebellious, but they have the process in them that if it's not right, it needs to be fixed, So that's what I learned in my whole career. Started in the mailroom, and then was able to be in charge of 3 military bases. The person they said they can't do anything.
Oh, get the chip on the shoulder.
3 in charge of 3 military bases. 70 libraries, technical libraries, and writing the government's database and library management system.
You better go with your bad self.
So it's like you have to know within yourself that whatever someone says is noise. Is what you say to yourself is what's important.
Hashtag cancel the noise. Another one. Wow. I was just so hyped. Just on running 70 bases and just moving into leadership and then canceling the noise and just being that person who defied the odds. But you said something so great, right? You talked about your teacher saying to your mom, right, that, can we get the class back? And oftentimes leadership at an early age looks like occupation is defiance order.
Yes.
So we label it as negative, and we suppress that leader. We suppress their geniuses, like yours is process. And teaching to change lives, what would it look like? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What would it look like to live in a world where teachers, educators, parents, leaders nurtured the genius and cultivated that versus what we've been doing traditionally, historically, of suppressing? What would that world look like, Cynthia?
Well, that's a good question. We just started at Loving Our Children, the nonprofit portion that I run, started writing Discovering Your Children's Gifts and Talents. And then we're putting both the negative and the positives with that. And then if you have a parent that is very orderly and you have a gifted child and that parent wants that child to conform, that child is going to only rebel or shut down. And so even though a parent may have all these organization skills, they don't know how to deal with a gifted child that's in music or some other area, arts and stuff like that. So what we're teaching them, these are the characteristics. So you can I'll use my own 3 kids as an example because they all are different.
Yeah.
One, if they're playing in the street and I have told them not to play in the street, and then all 3 of them are in the street. Well, the compliant child's not going to be in the street. The compliant child's going to be right on the edge. It's not going to go into the street. Mm-hmm. That child is not going to the street, but he wants to play with everybody else, but it's like, y'all need to get out of the street really quiet, but still throw me the ball, right? And then, the other child is like, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to get in trouble for a little while. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be over, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And the other one's like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever whatever that other one says.
Yeah.
But when I come and yell at them, get out of the street, the compliant child's going to say, I told y'all, right?
Yeah.
And then the middle child, that person's like, well, okay, fine, I'm getting out of the street, but I really don't think it's necessary, but I'm going to comply, I'm going to come in.
The risk
right?
taker.
And then, the risk taker, because then I'm going to be in trouble for a minute. But that third child, the mercy child, right, is all hurt and really how can I ever not do this again? And I'm such a horrible child. And so in all those 3 cases, I said the same thing to all 3 kids, but it was different reactions. So when we as teachers and parents and caregivers learn that every child is different and we need to know their languages, we need to know their characteristics and everything else. They are individuals, just like we are individuals. We want people to treat us as individuals and acknowledge the gifts and talents in us. We need to do the same thing with our children.
Wow. So what you're essentially saying is that we have to move from selfishness, this is the way I communicate, this is the way I've always done it, to selflessness, how to best communicate with you as the listener, because it's not so much what I say, is how I say it. It's
Yes.
the vehicle in how I say it. And you're saying, as caregivers, educators, leaders, parents, we have to adjust to the people that we serve, to the people that we educate,
Yes.
to the people that we lead. Wow. Versus, so that is very different in our current climate, right? You worked in private sectors, and you've probably have experienced, and I'm assuming you've experienced leaders who take that fear base, take that, this is what I say, this is the way it's always done. Like when you're faced with an environment that is more fixed and more selfish, like how do you approach it, and what have you done to be, and seems to be successful?
I'll give you an example, go back into the government and then private sector as being a contractor. So in my roles as a contractor, I had both the military and the contractors, both trying to give orders at the same time. And and trying to learn how to prioritize who's really who I need to really listen to at that moment.
Who's the big boss? The honcho.
But then I always go back to processes and policies. They govern my life. So therefore, if they're telling me to do something outside of what the process and the regulation says, is not going to get done. I don't care who you are. And then I had pushback at first, but then they started respecting that, okay, she's going to do what we are required to do, not what we want her to do. So in that, you start getting respect that way, because you're not going to back down, but I'm not going to be belligerent. I'm not going to go outside of myself. Cynthia's like this all the time, just about.
So calm.
Yeah.
Just like this.
Just like this.
So if you're on a roller coaster, you're going to be just like this too?
I probably won't get on a roller coaster. I also know not to put myself in situations that are going to make me get out of myself too.
So am I hearing a fixed mindset right now? Is that what I'm hearing?
I have a hybrid in me.
So you're half fixed, half growth? It's like
complex,
Complex. Okay. That makes sense. And it must be like a tug of war inside, right?
Yeah,
Just like,
it is. It is.
Get out of the comfort zone and stay where I'm safe. Like what is that for you? Now I'm curious. What makes you stay safe or play safe?
Even though I have this confidence, I still have that little girl sometimes that comes up.
Yeah.
And especially like when a lot of times I was offered a television show a couple years ago. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I was like, I'm not doing it. It's not going to happen. So, and then in the last couple, about the last 18 months, I started doing podcasts and everything else, because for my staff and everything, I let everybody else do it. I let all them to go there. I would push them. It's like, go. I'm their cheerleader and everything else, and making sure everybody else gets the kudos. And I stay in the background and just delegate it.
Yeah.
So that was me coming out of my comfort zone. So, I told myself, you will do this many podcasts, you will do these many things. When people ask you to come, you will come, because you're going to break that. I cannot have limitations. If I'm telling other people not to have limitations, I can't have limitations either.
So teaching to change lives is not having limitation. It's cultivating the genius within the learners, whoever we're serving. It's honoring their giftings and where they're skilled and just unconsciously competent. So they're so freaking good, they don't know how good they are.
Yes.
And just your perspective it's amazing. So my thing is, with teaching to change lives, right? Where do you see education going as a whole?
If we stay on the same track, we're going to be so far behind the rest of the world. Me living in different countries, they empower the children at a young age. When I was in Qatar and Kuwait, the kids, they would open the malls and have whatever was going on. If it was engineering day, they would bring their kids down there. The kids were interested. It had all these different teachers and everything else there. And they would open it up for the kids to just explore. And then they would say, okay, now that you guys seen it, let's go do it. And so they started. So one of the things in Loving Our Children that we just started this year with STEAM is Like Me program. So we're going to introduce kids to things that, if they want to be an artist, if they want to go be an engineer, we're bringing them in, because COVID, of course, we're doing a lot of stuff Zoom, so the kids can see people actually doing it. Then we're giving them projects. So this summer, we're actually doing writers. Writers are entrepreneurs too. So the kids are going to write their first book.
What?
Yes, and then we're going to do also a filming academy for the older kids. So we're so excited what we're doing, and it's like all these things just keep coming and coming in my mind, because it's like we got to change the norm, because the norm's not working, you know.
That's so powerful. Like, you're exposing them to things that they probably aren't familiar, or the things that they desire, or just curious about it. And I think exposure is the prerequisite of experiences, and experiences shape our lives. And it also inspires us to become more educated on that subject, and then we're equipped, and then we're empowered. And I think before we're empowered, like you said before, we have to be exposed. How does that resonate with you?
That is, I think that's my whole mantra, because how do you know what you don't know until you have the experience, right? So even like I was talking to a group of elementary kids, they're like, we don't want to learn this stuff. We need to know how to be out of debt. We hear our parents, talking about money and all these different things, right? They're like, we want to know how to not get in debt, you know? And these are kids in elementary school. So in elementary, I wasn't thinking about those things. So our kids are thinking about things that we didn't think about until we were almost grown. So it's like, so we can't keep like saying, okay, we want you guys to do these things. They're above that, and they have all this technology. So we have to catch up, and we have to learn another way to teach them, because they're bored.
Yes.
They are bored. So it's like, so how do we change that? Because when a person gets bored, they either get in trouble or they shut down.
Yep.
So, and we see that, and so much happening with the kids, and the suicide rates with the kids and everything else, it's like, okay, what are we going to do to inspire our generation? It is our responsibility not only to pass baton, but give them something, a sword, so they can go in and cut down the things that doesn't need to be there. You know what I mean?
I was going to say a saw, but a sword worked too.
Something sharp.
Because when I think of sword, I think of like Spartan 300, like, you know, taking somebody to the next, you know, universe, whatever. You're just like, sword cutting, that's cool too.
I think sword is cutting down a system that doesn't work.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
I see.
So yeah.
See, that's that author in you talking right
now.
You're able to do improv quickly, and yes, being effective, right? Oftentimes, right, as parents, as educators, as leaders, we often tell people, you know, go be great. But how to be great if we haven't experienced it or have seen it? And more importantly, we may know how, but we don't have the tools to be effective and the resources, right? So it's one thing to know it, the other thing is to have the right systems in order, like you talk about process. Because if I'm doing a recording of a podcast, I need a mic.
Yes.
Outside of that, it would just be me talking to myself out loud, and that's weird, right?
Yes, it is.
So can you talk to us more about like authorship, right? I know I have a lot of listeners who are out there who eventually want to become an author. Our producer is going to be writing a book on how to, you know, the Wedding Guide 101. So what was that path like to become an author? What was some challenges you faced, and what would be an advice that you would give? So that was like a 3-part question.
Right. So because I own a publishing company now, right? I can just give people 1, 2, 3, 4, but don't take no as an answer. There's so many different avenues now. And I know last year in May, the Library of Congress just legitimized self-publishing. So before, it was still a stigma among the publishing company community, but they just legitimized it. You can get your own ISB numbers and everything like that. So don't take no for an answer. With me, if somebody tells me no, I'm like, oh, that just was not. You're going to lose out. I'm going to go do something else, or I'm going to create my own. You know, and it's because I know what I have in me that needs to come out, that I don't listen to no. No is not an option. And if you really have a dream and a passion, it's not going to be an option for you.
Disclaimer, no within boundaries.
Right. Yeah, let's get that right. Because I don't want your viewers to be like, oh, that lady has lost it on your show.
She said no, it's not an option. I don't want any confusion.
Yes.
There's gray space, and I don't like gray space. No within boundaries. Continue.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for that. So, you want to be if you want to be a published author, there are so many different things you can do. There's Amazon, there's even doing ebooks. There's so many different things, but a lot of times you need a coach. Or a mentor to help you out. And you don't need to go spend, a lot of people were spending like $20,000. I'm like, all that they told you, you could have got it for like $500-$600. So, and no